Bum bum, digital narrative. Welcome to digital narrative. This is session 2. It's session 2. We already had a session with most of you last week in person on campus. This is the first time we do this in this online format, in this online mode, and part of this online mode is that these theory parts that I promised to you will be delivered as videos, 1 hour long lectures that compose different elements for you. So this is session 2, but I will also, contents of this session for today, because we have also a lot of new students in digital narrative. I will, part of this theory session, theory part, will be that I do a recap of what we did last week, to allow all of you to catch up, to be on the same speed. And after that, I will do that comes after that, okay? So, meaning for those of you that did it last week already, you did the reading, you digested it, you took it in, what the reading means, you thought of it, what it could mean for your own practice. You can move on to the second part. The second part will be, so you have the video. This is part 1. I will talk again what I talked about last week. And when I go to the second part, that's when let's see what I do. I will wave this green bag of plastic again. So that means if you watch this video on your laptop, on your screen, on your phone or whatever, and you want to find and skip ahead in this video to find a section when I talk about the new stuff, because you know already the old stuff, I will wave this green thing, so okay, good, this is when you start the video, okay? Meaning, for all of you that were last week in the session, in the class, in the theory section, skip this part, don't listen to me talking from now on until I wave again this green thing, and then you jump in, and then okay, good, this is where, and this is the new stuff, okay? For all of you who are new or want to rethink about what we did last week to better digest it, stay tuned, because this is for you. So what are those parts? What was the first thing we looked at last week? Last week we watched a little excerpt, a little passage from Werner Herzog's Cave of Forgotten Dreams. These are very old caves, thousands of years old, over 30,000 years old. And a lot of people say this is where it all came from within this cave. This is all the origin of art as you have it as painting, filmmaking, comics, sequential art, animation, performance, and so on. That it was kind of born, that the evidence that we have suggests that the first attempts of artistic practice comes from within these old black caves, that when they try to make sense of the world in this the blackness of the cave in the crypt. And fitting to that, we discussed Plato's cave. Okay, so part of the theory sessions is that you do the reading yourself, because the one thing is, I can only deliver you, and it's kind of connected with what we're talking about, my takeaways, my perspective of those things we talk about in the theory sessions, okay? So, and there is a chance for me to misunderstand it, okay? So I ask of you to check if I get it right. So that means you have a look at the reading, read it for yourself, think about it yourself, and then take that as a challenge for you. So I just got lost, so we'll keep on. And the other thing is, it is part of your training, it's part of your education, it's part of developing discipline. That means sitting down and read like a very boring old text that is thousands of years old, But you sitting down and reading this text, your brain goes into a mode where it tries to restructure itself, getting more used to this strenuous exercise for you that it is strenuous at the beginning, and over time it becomes more easily more fluid. Okay, so this is a practice part that is super important for you. So to engaging in theory and really sitting down and reading old texts that are kind of boring, sitting down and work through them, you know, is the practice that helps you to discipline yourself and move on to other levels of cognition, if you want to express it very complicated. Okay, so if I give you the reading, please do the reading yourself, and I give you time, and those things I give you, it's you get a lot out of, so they are very worthwhile. It's a lot of bang for your buck, as you say it. So that means these text passages I give you, they're super short. You know, this is like 10 minutes reading. Last week we did it in class, about 10-15 minutes. They are not very long, but at the same time they're not long. At the same time they are have super big impact. These are pieces of text that have influenced the thinking, big thoughts on this planet tremendously. You know, like in all big subjects, big intellectual, theoretical subjects, you come across these texts. These are foundational texts, you know. So that means I point out for you those little nuggets of gold. You put your attention on those little nuggets of gold, you know, and you will get a lot out of it. So a lot of big bang for your buck, if that's an expression I'm using correctly. So the first text is Plato's Cave. It's in the Republic. Republic is a kind of a theme collection of books Plato wrote down by writing dialogues. So Plato wrote down other people talking, and the big main protagonist is Socrates. And there are, in the Republic, there's a collection of books. There are about 10 books, and in the 7th book, from section 514 to 520, you find a passage about the cave. Okay, so you find all this reading. To find the reading for our theory parts, refer to the session collection folder in our OneDrive resource folder. So you get like strange emails from me, you know, pointing you out. I keep talking about the resource folder, you know. This resource folder becomes more and more important when we do these online sessions, because this is where I dump all the stuff in. This is the one place where you find a lot of stuff, including now these sessions, this video. You found this video in this folder, and additionally you find links and all the things you need for this session. Okay. So Plato's Cave. What the hell is it? Do the reading. Go into, if you have not done it already, go to, if you belong to those that are now joining us, find it in the reference folder, and in the folder locate. I give you two kinds of, I give you a website where you can read it, and I also give you a PDF. Read the whole cave by yourself. It takes about 10-15 minutes. Sit down, put some pants on. You know, you're sitting at home watching this, you know, in underwear. Put some pants on, and read it, and put your attention to it. 10-15 minutes. Process it, go through it, try to figure out what the hell is going on, and then you come back to it. Okay, so that means you pause the video now and read, and after you finished reading, you hit play again. Wow, great! You just read Plato's Cave, full on. This is like thousands of years old text that is very foundational, you know, and you managed to sit down and read it yourself. Congratulations, because other people, you know, when I talk about the cave, they always read about other people reading Plato, you know, it's always the interpretation of the other people's interpretations, and you went to the source. I mean, the source is in ancient Greek, and it's tough stuff, you know, it's a dead language nobody speaks and nobody even knows how to pronounce. Modern Greek is similar but different. So, and you, of course, read an English translation. Of course, with that comes the interpretation, the reading of the interpreter. Okay, we go into that, what it means, yeah. But still, you sat down and read Plato's Cave. Well done on that. So, you contemplated Plato's Cave. So, what is going on in Plato's Cave? Let's review. And we do that by... This is on, and we go to the whiteboard. Ta-dam! Whiteboard. Let's see. Don't want to break. It's a strange wire connected to me that some of you see, some don't. Okay, Plato's Cave. I need my notes. Do we need my notes? No, I don't need my notes. Let's do it. So, Plato's Cave. What is going on? So I think the first thing I usually notice, I talked with, if you have been to class, you know already, but you're not listening that, seeing that. It's a very disturbing. I want to point out how disturbing it is. Why it is disturbing? The story takes place in underground cave, okay, and in there sit a bunch of people, you know. And the disturbing thing is that these are slaves. From their birth, they have been chained into this cave, yeah. But not only are their bodies chained into this cave, so they were never able to leave the cave. All their life they lived in this cave since the birth, you know. Additionally, the whole body is constricted, you know. They are not even free in their rotation of the head, okay. So even where they look at is constrained. So their necks are enchained, you know. They cannot choose where to look, you know, for the whole lives, okay. So these are intense slaves and prisoners that are enchained and constricted. They are constricted in the most crazy, extreme way you can possibly imagine. The whole body, the whole joints, the whole movement of their bodies is constricted, you know. And they are constricted in these following ways. All they see is a wall. And this is the wall of the cave. So all they see, all they look at this cave wall. And what do they see? They witness a kind of theater play. They witness a shadow play, meaning behind them there is like a source of light. Oh, that's like not so really. Let me get that. Source of light, of fire. So it emits light. And between the fire and them, people walk past. People, things, horses, carriages, whatever. Stuff walks past. Okay, be in mind, they cannot rotate their head. So all they see, they look at the wall. And so, and what do they see with that setup? They only see the shadows of these people on the wall. They only see the black, solid shadows of these people. And because they live there for the whole lives, they become to understand these shadows for the people. They think this is real. That's the only reality they know. Is the shadow reality. Okay, so it's a very rich with metaphors. The casted shadows of reality. That's all they see, and they take it for real. So what happens? Okay, so there's a twist, a turning point in the story. And the twist is the following. One of these slaves, one of these prisoners, gets out. Something that is often overlooked is that this person did not escape. You know, this person did not after whole life watching the wall in the cave, just seeing the shadow play of reality, being deceived, this slave didn't come into the understanding, oh, something is very off here, I think there's something shady going on. Could it be some kind of scam going on? Are they playing tricks with me, with us, with my friends that I grew up with, and maybe let's try something, and they managed to break out somehow. No, not at all. In the story, by the way, this story is in context, is like Plato says that Socrates is telling this story to another one, Glaucon. We met Glaucon again in part 2. So it's Plato. So I say that Plato says that Socrates says, explains, tells this story. Okay. Where were we? Exactly. So this slave didn't just escape to get out of the cave. This slave got dragged out of. Okay, so one of those prison wards, some of those criminals that enslaved a bunch of people for their whole life, played them terribly wrong, kept playing tricks on them their whole life. This is like a big act that required a lot of effort, to make it so that they don't figure out this is an illusion. You need to put some effort into that. So they got someone of those criminals, out from those scam artists. They dragged one of them out. Okay, so that means it was not even the choice of one of those slaves. They got dragged out. And very important, that's the only big thing you need to get from this story is what that process of getting out of the cave is, and this is topology. Topology is the study, the logic, if you are literal, the logic of place. So the place it takes out is like, the important part is that this cave is below in the underground darkness. And in order to get out of here, you need to get up, you need to walk up out of there. And the Greek term is anabasis. Anabasis means the same as the Latin to ascend. Ascend is the opposite is descent, That means to, is that better? Most literally, it means something like step up. So they needed to walk upwards. Okay, so this is a movement up. So they were down in the black hole, being deceived, and then they raised. They came up. Okay, they emerged out of the depths into the heights. And what do they experience when they went out? Okay, that's the first time when they stepped out. That's a step out. When they stepped out of the cave, into the light of the sun. Okay, so it's very intense. The first time they saw the light, that means it was very hard on their eyes. But the thing they came to understand is that they, and that's very traumatic, and that they lived the whole life a lie, that they were deceived, that what they thought reality is turns out to be not reality at all. Okay, because in the light of evidence, of apparent evidence, as it looks, in the light of how it looks, here they are devoid of light, they perceive shadows to be real, but now in the light of evidence, as how it looks, and how it presents itself, it looks like reality is made of stuff that has not only shadows, but there's depth to it. There are shades of gray, shades, colors, and all these things. And all those things. Okay, so this is a metaphor for living in darkness and obscurity, in blackness, devoid of knowledge, only believing that that lies are true, thinking that the lies are true, not even being able to identify lies as being lies because you take those lies as truth, and then stepping up out of this darkness into the light, up into the light. Okay, so this is enlightenment then, most literal. Okay, this is clarity. Okay, that means this story tells about the journey up out of darkness into the light. Okay, so it's epistemological. So it talks about knowledge. Okay, now, and then of course you take that in and think about your personal life, and we can see why this story is very impactful, because it makes us wonder, you know, might there be something that we overlooked, that our whole life we spent thinking something is true, which then actually isn't, you know, that certain things that only seem to be true maybe check out to not be true, right? So what it maybe would see, the way it seems, it's the way let me reframe that. How it seems is not how it is. Okay, seeming and being, and maybe there's a difference in there, you know, and maybe we are scammed, tricked to some sort our whole lives, and we are not really aware of that. That is how it impacts. That is why this story is very powerful. And of course then we need to ask ourselves, how can we get out of this darkness, and how can we find the light, how can we raise, you know, our consciousness into a higher planes of clarity or enlightenment, you know, if you follow this topology, if you think the way out of belief is the way up into higher planes of light and so on, you know. But you know, I'm not sure of that takeaway from this story, because it's just, you know, I'm just reminded of, you know, in this story, you know, the escape out of darkness into enlightenment, you know, is not the choice of the slave. You know, it's not the slave's idea to get out of there. Ah, yeah, and by the way, you know, here's another thing, another twist to this story, you know, that is mentioned, you know, what do you think happens when this guy that just escaped and saw the real truth, you know, got enlightened, you know, goes back into the darkness and tries to tell all those other slaves that they're living in an illusion, and then their reality is not true, this is not the real reality, those shadows, but meager copies of reality, but it's not the truth itself, you know. What do you think those other fellow slaves would think of him? They would think he's crazy. They would think they lost it. So they all together agree that those shadows, you know, this is it, you know. But then there's this one guy who just like, I don't know, he just was away and came back, and now he's like talking about what? About light, you know, about three dimension, about depth, about whatever, you know, about the sun. Like, what is he crazy? Total lunatic. Okay, so this adds another twist to the story. But adding my own twist to the story is like, you know, I'm pretty skeptical. You know, it's red alert goes off in me by seeing that, you know, letting this slave get out of there was part of the criminal doing. You know, there's this one warden that took this guy and dragged out of there, you know. So I'm just thinking, you know, if there was so much invested into scamming them, you know, why isn't this anabasis, this ascent, this step up out into the light, why isn't that still, couldn't that be still part of this scam? See what I mean? So let's see, all of that, this whole thing, this whole thing including the sun. Who says this sun is any truer than this fire? This sun could still be part of fake light. It could still be contained in a big PlayStation. This all still could be a game played by an alien overlord. And even those criminals, trapping those slaves into there, even they could be scammed, even they could be deceived. And you maybe recognize this story, the cave, very old. But you can recognize this theme in this story in popular culture also. So if you have seen The Matrix, the same thing, right? So somebody, the main character Neo, lived his whole life a life that turned out to be fake, the Matrix, right? So then he woke up to the real reality, to the truth. But if I would have engineered the Matrix, what I would do, I would add a failsafe, in case somebody figures it out and wants to break out of the simulation, of the illusion, I would just make this breaking out part of the illusion. See what I mean? Maybe you recognize the experience when you sleep and you have a dream, and then you wake up in your dream to another dream. You see what I mean? Like you wake up, but you dream that you wake up. Okay? So think about what criminals invested in the cave. For thousands of years ago, they put a lot of effort into making this work. Like think about the Matrix in what it takes to build this very sophisticated illusion that you have in Matrix. Who says they are not able to build the illusion that you get out of the illusion, right? So when you wake up and you have your awakening and you see the light, who says that that is not a fake light? Who says that your awakening is not a dream? See? Similar to Truman Show. Truman Show is same topic as the cave. So meaning somebody, main character, played by Mr. Truman. Mr. Truman played by, I want to say Tom Hanks, but it's not Tom Hanks. Jim Carrey. From baby being brought up, lived the whole life in like a cave of himself. And this cave included a sun. This dome where Mr. Truman lives includes a sun. And this dome is the cave, an artificial source of light, like the fire in there. And then at the end, if you remember, at the end, literally, the main character let's see if I can do that better. The main character walks up the steps. See, this is also an anabasis. This is also walking up out of the cave. Is the door out of the cave, out of the dome, out of the illusion. And that's the end. Yeah? So it's the same thing as Plato's cave. The Truman Show is a copy like the Matrix of Plato's cave. So, they put a lot of effort, into building this studio and filmed the life of Mr. Truman, and maintained the illusion for Mr. Truman to think, that is what he's living is reality, So if I'm putting together the show, I would make it much more interesting by just building, like, where does he go? Like, I would put in a door there, and this door just leads to Studio 2. See? Much more interesting. So imagine you watch the reality show Truman, somebody lived their whole life in an illusion, and then, they break out, and now they find out what life really is about. but that is a second studio. Now this becomes much more interesting, okay? So you see, you catch my drift here? So how do you know? How do you know that this step up, this anabasis, that's like out of the picture. This anabasis, this step up and out, this awakening, this rising, doesn't get you deeper into trouble. You think you go up out of the cave, but if you go up out of the cave, maybe you screw up and you go deeper into it, by selling you now true reality that actually is not true at all. See what I mean? Okay. So this is interesting. So you see, like, you read like an old text. It's like hundreds of years, thousands of years old, about 2,500 of years old. From somebody that died and it got written down by somebody also died. Many generations later, they all die, and it's just a dusty old text that reads very full of strange ways of writing. But then if you process this text, you can see, that actually, maybe I can relate to it with my own life somehow. Maybe, even today, maybe with fake news, with alternative facts, maybe this issue about what is true and what is not is very important, And for us, the chord is struck with the following, that we try to tell a story, So what is really what we're doing when you tell a story? Are we criminals? Meaning, do we try to catch people and try to put them in little caves and tell them and tell them of pretend realities? Are we the fabricators of shadows? Star Wars, is Star Wars real? No. But it tries to be very believable real, right? So when we go and telling our stories, we do our narrations. Is this what we're trying to do? Is wrap others in lullabies? Do we want to deceive them? Do we want to scan them? Do we want to suggest our imagination in our dream worlds for them to be true, to catch them? See? So suddenly it's very, very fruitful, and it's very deeply related with our practice, and this is why I put that to you. Process it, deal with it. And now we move on to second part, okay? So now green. Green. Theory part 2. So theory part 1 was Plato's cave. Okay. So and this is when we got in touch with belief and knowledge, with fake truth and true truth. Okay. And we can see there's a fundamental thing when we talk about meaning. What does it mean? What do we communicate? What do we talk about? What does it mean? And then think about, maybe you just think that means that, but what does it really mean, And so on. Okay, so this is as a fundament also in not only telling any kind of story, but telling the fundamental story. And the fundamental story is what reality is. That is, what is this? This is the fundamental story that we all deal with it somehow. Okay, so second part, and this is the last part we deal with Plato. Next time we will move on. These two snippets of text. I would say that's it. That summarized Plato beautifully, and you have it nailed. and you can move on. The second part is deeply related to it, and it comes up in another text passage, So the first one was Plato's cave, is an allegory of the cave, it is called, So you know that very well. You can discuss it with other people. You have your own thoughts, your own opinions about it. You thought about it deeply. You thought about how it relates to you, or relates to your practice, relates to your consumption of other media, of the stories of other people tell you, other telling you about the sun that is really true. Is the sun just like a projected, a fake light of some sort, etc.? And the other one is where Plato particularly addresses poetry. Okay, so when we talk about story narration, the word poetry is very close to it, And this is a section where Plato discusses poetry specifically. So what is poetry for Plato, and we need to flag it already, it's a little bit, can be sometimes confusing. So Plato writes down philosophy. How does Plato do it? By telling stories. What kind of stories? Dialogues. He writes down, he narrates, he tells of dialogues between people. Okay, and they discuss stuff. Okay, so Plato is one of those puppet masters in the cave playing with puppets, and his main puppet is Socrates. He's also a historical figure and used to be Plato's teacher. So we memorize Socrates by Plato writing down what Socrates once said. But it's difficult to figure out what Socrates really said, and it's difficult for us, particularly because it connects with what we're talking about, what Socrates really said. Okay, so are we like hearing just Plato's version of Socrates, and so on. This is not discussed. So in this section, it's the same as before. So we have Socrates and Glaucon talking with other, And this section here, where Plato goes into what poetry is about what Socrates thinks is an ideal state. Like how should a country be run? Like who should be in, who should be out. And he now talks about poetry. Okay, so I'd like you now to do the reading of that. It's again very short. 10. It is shorter. It is shorter than the Plato's cave. Okay, so look into our resource folder. I gave you links. One is linked to a website, one is to PDF. PDF is a little bit easier to read. The website has even a lot of notes and even the original Greek, if you want to look it up. It is in the Republic, book 10, from 595 to 599. So this is the beginning of the 10th book. Okay, so if we just find book 10 from Plato's Republic, it starts right at the beginning and it goes on for some pages, and then you should get the main idea what Socrates thinks about poetry. Okay, so please go chase down the reading. Do it now. You have time from now on. Pause this video, do the reading. Wear some pants. Okay, get some pants on. Get some pants on. Do the reading. Pause this video. Okay, good. You just did the reading. Congratulations. You read something most people talk about but never read it themselves. Nice. Well done. So you're part of the inner circle now. You just went through it. Part of it's maybe difficult to read. Very old language. The wording is very like, But you just did it and try to grasp the main points of it. And we now go through it. Okay, so Plato discusses poetry. We go. Back to the whiteboard. Okay, so we need to wipe down the cave. Sorry. I have limited whiteboard space. You know, in our courses we have like 2 walls full of whiteboards. Here I only have this small area, and I cannot walk much around because then you will lose me from the camera. Okay, so I need my notes. Okay. Ooh. So Plato, Socrates discusses with Glaucon, another character, what is poetry for him, you know, and he argues very pervasively, and he almost convinces us, you know. So what is the gist? What is the core of what Socrates' point is? Okay, so the point is poetry. Boom. It's about poetry. So what is poetry? You know, you might think poetry is like when you talk very obnoxiously, like, ooh, the sonnet liveth among the mortals, but the Greens did not, or something like that, right? But it comes down from Greek, and it comes from the Greek verb poeo, and it means to make. So poetry as a noun is kind of the making, okay? So that all it means is that it is made, that it is made up, maybe you can go, okay? So all it is a sort of making, you know? It's not yet, as in the times of Socrates, it is not yet defined as something obnoxiously that people do when they write or talk only, right? So this is just making, okay? And what does it do? Right on the first page, in the couple of the first sentences, the first thing he makes it a connection with poetry and and a word that is usually translated as imitation, and that is in Greek mimesis. Okay, so mimesis lives in a mime. Okay, so if you think about a mime that mimics, you know what mimesis is. Okay, so part of me is like, I'm taking away the fear out of very complicated words. It's very easy. You know, poetry said it's the made up. It's what is made up. Mimesis is the mimicking. Okay, and you think about, look up dictionary what mimicking is. Okay, so it is a sort of imitation. If I mime you, you know, I mimic the way you behave. It is copy someone, okay? It is representing. It has a particular. It is a way of representing, but with a particular flavor to it. And what flavor does Socrates give poetry? Through mimesis, through this imitation. Not a good one. It is not a good one at all. Okay? Because in his version of, he tries to explain this whole thing. The big problem is when he tries to understand what is this the mimetic, the mimicking poet, what are they doing? And in his understanding, as he frames it, this is his kind of worldview that he kind of puts onto you, and you buy into that. There is an idea. So his example, he goes, you know, tables and couches, if I remember correctly, you know. There are many tables. Let's make it simpler. Tables, okay? There are many tables, but what all these tables refer to is the idea of a table. Okay, this is the trick. This is a trick he does. Socrates is a very good trickster. Okay, he's a very good trickster, and he says there's the idea that is first and primarily, and he goes in Greek. I'm not here translating I'm not translating, this is not me a crazy interpretation that Socrates talks about ideas, This is idea. This is Greek, ancient Greek, and this is the word he uses, idea. Idea, okay? And it can be, it is connected with eidos, idea and eidos. So this is a idea that is based on what you see, okay? So you can say, idea means also translate it as form. So it is an appearance of some sort that has a look. Yeah, look is also a very good translation. So idea is a look of something. So if you say the idea of a table, try to find another word for idea. Okay. So if it's Greek, you can translate it as the idea of a table. You can say it's the form of the table. It's the look of a table. It is whatever it is that is connected with what you can see. Okay, and it also has some sort of epistemology, like some sort of understanding to it. So if you can see it, you can know it. That kind of way. Okay. So and what does it do with that? With the idea? In his explanation, we have the idea of the table, and that comes in the craftsman. And this is, if you go Greek, it comes from teke. It's a technician, the craftsman. The craftsman comes in, looks at the idea of a table, and then makes the table. Technician comes in and makes the table. So techne also means crafting, making, similar to poetry, making of some sort. Technical making. The idea, the technician comes in, makes a technical version out of the idea. Okay. So and Socrates makes this trick. It's the table is not the idea itself. All right. It's not the idea itself, but it's original in the sense that it's the making of it. So, and then he comes in and he talks about the painter, and he links the painter to the poet. So we have two different words for making. Technician makes, the poet makes. So what does the poet do? Does the poet refer to the idea? And Socrates refuses this one and says, no, the poet refers us to technician's table. So the poet then, the painter poet then, when the painter draws a table, the painter does that by observing that the technician made. Okay, so the table from the poet is a copy of the table from the technician. And the table from the technician is a copy of the idea of a table, And through that, Socrates argues that basically what the poet is, the bottom line of a poet is a scam artist, That the poet produces copies, and not even a copy of the truth. It produces a copy of the copy, because the technician already produces a copy of the idea of the original. So then if a poet comes in, the poet makes a copy of a copy. So there are 3 steps, 2 steps and 3 positions away. Number 1 is the idea. That's it. That is the real. Okay, this is the natural, where Plato goes into maybe it's made by God or maybe even by no one, but that is proposed as that is natural. And the Greek word for natural comes from physis, and that is where you have the word from physical. So interesting. So for Socrates, the physical is the idea. Maybe some of you would think that the technician makes a physical version, that the table of the technician that you can use to put your stuff on, that is a physical one, yeah? But not in original Greek, okay? So the first, number one, is the idea of the table. Number two, close but removed, is the copy of the table. That is the table you can put stuff on. And there are many of these tables, but there's only one idea of the table. And then number three, again and step away, is the table of a painter. Okay, it's a copy of a copy in there. And that is basically, and there's one key sentence that where Socrates tries to find other names for that table, for the third table. And we have the word that looks cryptic, doesn't make any sense, but if you spell it out, if you read it out, it is called phenomena. Phenomena. Okay, so see, I'm very lazy when I translate. So we have the idea of the technician, the poet, and what the poet makes are phenomena. And he says, that he has particular says, these are what the poet produces. These are phenomena, but by no means, not at all, is it the truth. And the Greek word, we need to go into that later, but I just say it, is aletheia. And it means like the uncovered, the clear, the unconcealed truth. They're also synonymous for reality. So he makes it very explicit. You do not have room for argumentation. When you read it, you all should agree, this is the point Socrates tries to make. Is that, and he goes on into finding different words for that. So he goes into that saying that the poet, this idea of art, that the poet produces phenomena and not the truth itself. The truth itself cannot be produced, because when you produce this, you just produce a copy of it. So then if you produce a copy of a copy, you come up with fantasy, phenomena, fantasy, phantasm, fantastic things. So these are phenomena that are, what is the core thing? If we want to talk very complicated, we say, what's the ontology of phenomena? They appear to be. And phos, you have in phenomena, the core thing is phos. Phos means light. Photons, light. Photography, phenomena. That's where it all comes from, okay? That's light. And this is apparent light. That is light that seems to be real, but it checks out to be not real. This is in the cave, the fire that projects a copy of a copy. Okay, so the fire uses the people that walk past it, which are copies from the original idea from people, and projects us on the wall. Okay, so it appears true, but it's not. It's what seems to be true is not what is true. It's apparently a phenomena. Apparently, what apparently is true is not what is really true. What seems to be true, what looks true, might not what is true. And basically he goes on to argue yeah, good. That's it. So he goes on to argue basically, and this is why we shouldn't allow those kind of artists that are just very sophisticated scam artists in our state. This is what he proposes when you read on, He says, in our state, our ideal state, it's all about truth and education and knowledge. We should not allow artists that mimic reality and also mimic imitate imitations of reality. See? Because this is when you get lying. Okay? This is when you get scam people. This is again the similar takeaway from the cave. You know? What is your objective as an artist? To deceive, make people buy into an imaginary world. You know? What do you use it for? To misinform? You know, can you say, here's a good one. Can you say something really truly by making something up? Right? My piece of art, yeah, I made it up. Can you really say something truthful through making something up? What are you doing? Are you just a liar and not yet aware of yourself lying? So what does something I just wanted to do? Yeah. So we have the idea, the untouchable ideas that is made. Is it made at all? We don't know. But there's only one of it. There's the idea of the table. But then technician comes in, makes a copy of the original. Poet comes in. Poetic artist comes in. Makes a copy of this copy of the original. Okay? So this copy looks true. You know? Poets are very good in simulation. You work on computer, 3D rendering. This table that you rendered in 3D looks good. Now here comes in, you know. So know what is for. Very nice. So this is what 2,500 years before, you know. What is the digital designer doing? What would Socrates say if you try to describe what we are doing? You know, you study Bachelor of Design. You study within digital media. I think most of you do. So you are a digital designer. What are you doing? What are you doing? You look at pictures. You look at illustrations, on paintings, on artworks of other artists and try to make them digital. You know, if you do 3D stuff, you know, you look at images of tables and then you make a 3D table. That means you're not looking actually on the real table, on what looks like a real table, but you're looking at the copy of a copy to produce another copy. Right? You're even worse. You're worse than a poet, worse than an artist, worse than like a painter. You produce a lie of a lie of a lie. How could you have any chance to say anything truthful, meaningful, by being removed so far from the sacred, true idea? Okay, so this is a little bit maybe different also how we use idea in the common language. Just see? Okay, again, like Plato talks about mimesis, mimicking, poetry as mimicking, you know, this kind of storytelling. And he refers to Homer. So Homer is a poet, a very famous poet. We will meet Homer later on. He produced poetry, very influential. And he says basically, I don't think we can accept Homer in our ideal state because just a scam artist, just somebody who pretends to be smart. Pretending to be smart, not really smart. That's what I'm doing here. You know, I come in, I build a cave. This is my cave. With lights, with phenomena, with photons, lights illuminating me, you know? And I come in and I put on this act. This is a played performance by me, you know? I made all this up, put all these things together, you know, in order to make you think that you are studying something that is smart, you know. And by listening to my voice, I make you believe that I know all this stuff. I can figure it out. So you trust me to not lying to you. See? So what do you do with that? Like, what do you do with that? You know, is art? Is your art fundamentally a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy? Is that lost? It got the truth lost in translation? As a designer, what is a designer doing? Design, you have the word sign in there. Signature, a sign. What are you doing for this? What kind of sign are you producing as a designer? What sign do you design as a designer? A copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. This is very old, this idea of idea and imitation, of representing something that is a copy of a copy. But it comes up in postmodern philosophy with Jean Baudrillard when you talk about simulacra. And this is also what Matrix is based off. So Matrix is based on postmodern Baudrillard's idea of simulacrum, which is goes back to this one here. It's very deeply connected with this one, you know. And even in modern physics, I don't know how you say, physics of this century, 21st century, you have the idea of simulation, this idea that this is all a simulation of some sort. Okay, so think about what is your role with that, you know, what are you doing when you put together your digital narrative? Is your digital narrative 3 steps removed from the idea? Is it on the 4th place? You know, is all what you do are you really just a sophisticated liar? Are you a deceptor? Are you a scam artist? Like a scam artist that doesn't even know that they are a scam artist? Yeah, who thinks like, oh yeah, do it like proper, and they make something that is meaning and is proper, you know, and tells about the truth. Huh? That's a level of scam right there. Okay, so put that in, process it, ask yourself, how does it relate to you? You know, am I getting something wrong? Did I distort this explanation somehow to you? Think about how it relates to you. Yeah, like process that. I need to check the time. Yeah. Okay, so this is theory. Let's go back. Confused. Don't find my buttons here. So this was theory number 2. You know, we're closing in on the topic of what is storytelling, what is narration. You know, finding its roots in deep, dark caves centuries ago. You know, trying to recover this thinking and shine some light on it. But by shining light on it, we need to ask ourselves, what kind of light do we shine on it? Is it a fake light? You know, it gets deeply crazy and deeply disturbing the deeper we think about it. You know, the more we try to make sense. What the hell is a digital narrative? You know, the more we start thinking, we lose track out of it. You know, it slides through our hands. What is it? You know, like whose opinion matters? You know, if they're all just deceived by some big scam, you know, who to turn to, who to go to? Yeah, of course you do. You study digital narrative here because we deal with it. Okay, good. This was the first theory session. You know, this is development. This is my first iteration of it. It surely will change somehow. I'm also open if something I need. You know, like that's what it is. So we just deal with it after another. Important is that you try battle with those ideas, because you battle and you try to put them together. This is training for your brain. This is exercise. You know, if you want a bigger muscle, you go and lift something heavy. If you want to have a bigger brain, like a more connected brain, you need to put stuff in there and then it can wrangle it. You know, you need to stress it with some like, oh, what the hell is going on? When you do that, your brain gets more connected and you will be able to be quicker, figure out connections and solutions to something. It's part of your education, you know, so don't avoid, you know, if you go into it, it hurts your brain, you get a headache. It's all right, stay close to it. I'm not saying like get a migraine. You stop before it starts really hurting, okay? Be gentle, you know, but a little bit stressing your brain is good. Will take, you get some IQ points out of it, okay? Yeah, thank you. This is, let's switch to the, yeah. So this is 3, 1, and 2. Yeah, and let's just stop talking. This is it. Thank you. Let's see each other in future weeks. And